Hello. Today we're going to look at how we show the past, present and future in British Sign Language. In English, we can usually tell from the verbs. For example, you might say, I worked, I am working, I shall work. And in that way, we show the past, the present and the future. BSL is different. The sign which describes working is like this. This sign can change if we want to describe the kind of work. For example, we might be talking about hard work or easy work.
Hard work. Easy work.
But no matter what kind of work we are signing about, the sign for work doesn't change to show past, present and future. What happens is that we use other signs to describe when the action takes place. And these signs usually come at the beginning of a sentence. For example, if we start with this sign,
A long time ago.
then everything that follows happens in the past until we change the time again. Have a look at this.
A long time ago, I worked in London. Now, I work in Bristol. Next year, I'll be working in Glasgow.
Did you spot the signs that change the time?
A long time ago. Now. Next year.
Because BSL is a visual language, it makes use of the space around the signer to show time. There are 4 imaginary timelines, and the signer will place signs referring to time along these lines. Now Clive's going to show you a few examples. Do you remember these signs from an earlier program?
Child. Young person. Adult. Growing up.
These signs are made on the timeline that shows people growing up. Another timeline runs from behind the signer, over his shoulder and out in front of him. Signs referring to the past move backwards along this line.
Recently. In the past. Last week.
And signs about the future move forwards along it.
In the near future. In the distant future.
For signs on this timeline, the signer's cheek is the present. So the sign yesterday moves backwards from the signer's cheek. And the sign tomorrow moves forwards from the cheek. And if you want to say up till now, the sign starts in the past and moves forward to the present. If you're right-handed, the 3rd timeline runs along your left arm and hand. Along this timeline, you make signs that mean next week, in 2 weeks' time, before, earlier. If you want to say next Tuesday or last Wednesday, here's how you'd sign.
Next Tuesday. Last Wednesday.
Look at the difference in these signs.
In 2 weeks' time. For 2 weeks.
And for some signs, your left hand is used like a clock face.
For hours and hours. Late.
The 4th timeline runs in front of the signer. On this line are made signs for passing time. Eventually. Continue. For a long time. From Monday to Friday. Now, Clive and I are going to show you a conversation using some of these time signs. See if you can spot them. Hello.
Hello. I haven't seen you for a long time. What have you been doing?
I've been very busy recently. Last week, I was travelling all over the place. Yesterday, I was out filming. And today, I had a meeting that went on for hours and hours and hours. I'm exhausted.
What about tomorrow?
Tomorrow, I've got to write a report.
And next week?
Next week's different. I'm going on holiday.
Great.
Now, to round off today, here's Jerry Hanafin describing the history of manned flight from its earliest beginnings right up to the present day and into the future.
Long, long ago, when men wore beards, they would walk along and watch birds in flight. They'd watch the small birds flying around in flocks and see big birds flying through the sky, flapping their wings and then riding on the air currents. They'd watch a bird land and see how it landed, slowing down by pushing its wings forward against the air. And of course, man began to think about the possibility of flying himself. Eventually, someone invented wings, which he strapped onto his arms, flapped to try them out, and thought, yes, this might work. So having put on the wings, he ran and flapped the wings and ran and flapped the wings, launched himself to the air. Of course, all he did was fall down to the ground again, failing to fly. A long time after that, someone else had another idea and built a bicycle with a framework attached to it and wings. He put some goggles on and then pedaled the bicycle as hard as he could. The thing teetered from side to side as he went along and eventually tipped over and collapsed and the wings broke. So once again, man had failed to fly. A long time after that, someone thought of an aeroplane with two wings. A biplane with a propeller. You had to spin by hand to get the engine going. The pilot sat in the cockpit with his goggles and said, right, ready? The plane began to move along the ground and went faster and faster, and the wings flexed, and then he got off the ground, bounced back, got off the ground again, and eventually managed to fly. So at last, man had achieved flight. Well, today, we have these huge, huge aeroplanes like Concorde. And hundreds of people go in these things. Some even have two entrances because there are so many people to get on board. There are rows and rows of seats in the aeroplanes, and they even show films during the flights. These planes taxi out onto the runway, and then with a huge surge of speed, they race along the runway faster and faster and faster until they take off and then fly up into the sky and then disappear into the distance. In the future, what's going to happen? I or you might be boarding a rocket with lots of other people, and the rocket engines will fire, and the rocket will go up faster and faster and faster and eventually fly to the moon. And then, having landed on the moon, all the people can get out, wearing their helmets and their breathing apparatus, and walk in the low gravity of the moon. And way, way down there, you'll be able to see the Earth and wave to it. That may well be what the future holds.